This is no time for learning. If you don't know law enforcement, if you haven't lived it, if you haven't done investigations, if you haven't ran and managed people, then you shouldn't be running.
Wow.
Because we're going to suffer. The community is going to suffer.
Hey, Minerva, one of the biggest questions that, you kind of hear around, and it's kind of sad, but what do you say about those that think that a woman has, not the best qualifications to be in any Leo type of, format or employment, or even those that say, hey, well, can't she run an actual agency such as the El Paso Sheriffs? What do you say to those individuals?
It's an important question because I have gotten it asked by a few people. Well, they'll see me and they'll say, well, you're kind of petite. Can you be the next sheriff? And I said, well, I served in the military. I was in El Paso PD 5 years working downtown Central, which was one of the toughest areas back then, busiest areas. Then after the attacks on 9/11, I went to work with the FBI, and I was there for 21 years working criminal counterterrorism matters. My last 5 years, I was a supervisory special agent and retired so I could run for sheriff. I love to see their reactions. Their eyes get wider and they just smile and they say, yes, you are ready to be the next sheriff. So it's an important question. I don't think it should be about men and women. It should be about a person. Look at the person's background.
I agree 100%. And we're in 2024, so kind of they should go in there. So I would like to go in there and kind of just follow up with another one. So as a woman running for sheriff, what are some of the unique perspectives and strengths that you kind of bring into the leadership role that may differ from your current opponent?
And I don't know if this is related to being a woman, but as a person, I am the type of person who likes to gather data. I love intel. I love to look at it. I love to study it, and I love to make decisions based on that information. So I always make informed decisions. So that's one of the things that the sheriff's office needs is somebody who is from an outsider who's going to look at the policies, who's going to look at how we're spending the money, where is it needed, and make decisions.
And that's amazing because one of the things that you had said last time, it was accountability. So is that, a focal point in what you're actually bringing?
No, absolutely. I'm already asking those questions of why does it take 3 hours to book an inmate? And when you're booking somebody, it's not like you go alone. You always take a person with you. So why is it taking 3 hours? Well, somebody was telling me, well, because this other section is not really the sheriff's office. Somebody else handled this. And again, my question is, why is it taking 3 hours to book somebody? So you need somebody who's going to ask questions and is going to look for information as far as why is it taking this long?
Let me ask you a question in that same regards. As a sheriff, do you see that there will be some disruption, within the actual, that you're bringing change, or what do you actually, as an individual, kind of think like, hey, this is important for the accountability towards the public, or what do you think on that? Like, have you yourself kind of, gone through this in your mind?
Oh, absolutely. One of the great questions that they asked me is, what do you plan to do with our executive management? So I will meet with them because I don't know who they are. I don't know what they know. So I'm going to be meeting with them, asking a lot of questions because I love to do that. I love to gather data. I want information, and I want them to tell me what is a way to move forward. Just because I'm currently saying that I'm not going to bring an executive management with me, but that doesn't mean that there's not going to be changes. Because if the person is not in the right position to move the sheriff's office in the right direction, then that person shouldn't be there.
Excellent. No, that is. I think El Pasoans are ready for accountability. I think I know for a fact, as an El Pasoan, I'm very prideful about the city. I know it's a beautiful city, and I think that having to be able to go in there and have the local law enforcement working with the community, something amazing. So
it's going to take us to another level.
Okay, so as an actual Republican, you're running in what is considered to be a democratic area. So what are some of these unique challenges, and how do you plan to go ahead and extend that olive branch and address this diverse community?
I'm running as a Republican, but I'm not part of any political movement. I'm not part of any political machine. My party is the people. And I'm talking to both sides. I'm talking to Democrats. I'm talking to Republicans. I'm talking to swing voters, because as the next sheriff, I'm going to represent everybody. I'm not going to make any difference. I just want to work with the community in order to resolve the problems that we're facing.
Honestly, so this is excellent. So let me ask an additional question. So what measures, what standard operating procedures, or what approach are you going to go ahead and lead the sheriff department to kind of remain impartial and effective, despite of the political dynamics that exist?
Yeah. So coming from an organization that we didn't make politics an issue, even though we're out there in the news, at least the FBI was, as regular agents, you don't ever ask a person, are you a Republican, are you a Democrat? We're about enforcing the law.
Okay.
And following the Constitution. And that's the same thing that I want to do with the sheriff's office. It's not going to be about politics. It's going to be about the people.
Okay, honestly, that's excellent. Let me follow up with this. What would you go ahead and say to the Democratic voters, and how would you actually engender the commitment for them to vote for you, and without the affiliation of any politics? And what exactly would be, your approach to that? How what are you currently doing? I mean, because you're out there in the streets. I mean, you're constantly out there. It's a grassroots movement. So, what would you kind of go in there and say to these, specifically to these Democratic voters, or this sector within El Paso? What would you say to them to say, hey, you know what, I am the right candidate for this job?
So there's two things that I have said in the past. I'm not a part of any political movement. I'm not part of any political machine. I'm for the people. And as the next sheriff, I will never write legislation. I will never introduce legislation. I'm just going to enforce the law and serve the community. And so that's what I said to anybody, regardless of their party. I am for the people. That is my party. I am seeking your endorsement because that is what is important to me.
Let me ask you this follow-on question. Have you already thought about some engagements that you've personally have envisioned to close, or really knit that relationship between the local sheriff department and the community?
So yes, I have. It's actually part of my vision. If you go to my website, you'll see it on there. But any promotional packet from the time that I arrive, anybody who's going to promote within the office, they're going to have to provide a community project that they participated in, or any internal program that they assisted within the sheriff's office.
That's amazing.
Yeah, that made it better, because I want employees to be proud of the office that they work in, and what have they done to make it better.
Wow. So in other words, what you're going to be asking from your team is like, hey guys, like, let's raise this another level, and let's make this about the community. So that's going to be part of. Are you planning? And I don't want to put any words in your mouth, but what you're saying, to kind of explain, you're saying, hey, one of the actual requirements is I want my team that I'm going to be heading to go above and beyond, but towards something exemplary, like, basically being involved with the community.
Yeah, because again, the community are our eyes and ears out there, but it doesn't do us any good if you think that deputies are not approachable. Okay. So you're going to share that intel if deputies come to your business and they come and have coffee with you, then you're more likely going to share things that you've seen or you've heard. And so again, it's about building that relationship with the community. We have to work with the community in order to address the problems that we're facing.
And honestly, that's a very commendable actual approach, because we know what we currently are. There is some actual divide, if I'm going to be honest. And is that what you're trying to kind of bridge?
Yes, law enforcement or the community should always feel like they can approach law enforcement. That's why, as an agent, when I worked for the FBI, I would always go into those communities that other agents would normally not go to, because you build relationships, and with those relationships, you gather intel.
So now, kind of, let me ask you: did you enjoy doing that?
I loved it.
What did you enjoy about it? I mean, what was it that you enjoyed?
I think that's why I'm having fun campaigning because I get to talk to people, and I just love talking to people. I love gathering intel, love gathering data, because you learn so much from people. If I had any advice for young people, is always network. That is, I mean, networking will get you to places, because if you don't know something, somebody out there will, and they'll point you in the right direction.
Exactly. How does the saying go? Like, how do you get to Rome? Well, you have to ask.
Yeah.
You have to kind of ask to get there. Now, let me ask you, when you're out there, how has the reception of the community been so far?
It's been very positive. I think people are ready for a change. But again, it's not just about the person, it's having the qualifications to lead the sheriff's office into the next level. And when I say sheriff's office, is the community's part of that, because we're not going to resolve the problems that we're facing unless we have the support of the community.
So, Minerva, let me go ahead and let me ask you a very quick question. Ugarte is your current opponent. Are you willing to debate him, or do you want to debate him?
I've actually gotten that question a lot.
Okay.
And I said, absolutely. Name the date and the time, and I will be there. Why? Because the community is hiring a next sheriff.
So when you're walking through all these communities, because, I mean, you almost do this on the daily, is that a question that people out there ask you?
Yes. And it's in different settings. When I go to events or whatever, would you debate your opponent? I said, absolutely. You're hiring a sheriff. You deserve to have a debate. The people deserve a debate.
Now, let me ask you, do you think your opponent would be up for it?
I hope he is. I don't see why he wouldn't. So
Exactly.
I am if somebody out there who's watching this podcast, please share it, because the people deserve a debate.
I think that sounds like fun. And El Pasoans, we want to know. We want to know. We want to compare. We want to be informed.
You want to compare the law enforcement backgrounds? How long have I served in a police department? What kind of work have I done? How many search warrants have you executed? How many operations have you reviewed? How many people have you overseen?
Yeah. Have you been at that strategic level?
Yes.
You know, from that strategic level
Yes.
all the way down to your actual, where the rubber meets the road.
Right.
I think that would be something amazing. I think El Pasoans, they're very smart individuals. And I'm pretty sure that they would love to actually go out there and compare, you know, apples to oranges, the way that they say, and make an informed decision when they go in there and cast that ballot on.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. I mean, that's very, very, very excellent. I think hopefully it happens.
Yes, I do too.
Minerva, let me ask you this next question, and this has to do a little bit more in regards to like criminal justice reform. Now, what specific reforms within the criminal justice system do you believe that, you know, are most urgently needed here in El Paso, and how would you actually, I guess, set these up for the actual sheriff departments that they know that you're going to assume? So, what do you think about that? You know, criminal justice reform. Is there anything, you know, that you would want to highlight? You know, that's possibly at the top of your list.
Yes, mental health.
That is huge.
Yes, it is huge. And considering that we've had 50 deaths in the last 10 years in jail, and those deaths have been categorized as natural, accidental, or suicide. I don't know what an accidental is because of the lack of visibility. Suicides, how did those suicides happen? So we don't have that information, but we need to look at that. We need to look at, were we dealing with people with mental health problems, or are they dealing with are they depressed because they were arrested, now they're away from what they used to know? So those are the things that I would like to look at and provide, look for solutions.
So that would be something, mental health, and of course that's in regards to the individuals in the community. Okay, awesome. Let me go ahead and ask you another question. This: how do you envision the role of the sheriff department in promoting fairness and justice for all individuals? you know.
It shouldn't even be, I guess in my mind, I'm thinking that it shouldn't even be a question that we should be asking today as far as fairness.
Yeah, we are in 2024. We should, yeah.
But really, I've never forgotten about my upbringing. You know, I lived in Mexico for 8 years. I've always worked hard and never made a difference between looked at a person, are you blue, red, green, or white? You know, it's a person. And I think organizations become who they are because of their leader. And so as a leader, it's a lot of responsibility, but people will follow who you are.
You know, and I think that's very important because overall the sheriff department here in El Paso is phenomenal. You know, those individuals that are, you know, doing their beats, those people, you know, the deputies that are out there, you know, excellent individuals. And I could only imagine that, you know, that in itself kind of goes in there and causes some stress, you know, in regards to, you know, dealing with mental health issues out there. And I guess it is worthy to kind of look at what's going on. I guess that's a very, you know, high level point in regards to, hey, what are we doing with, you know, excellent.
For employees too, like what kind of programs are being offered? Because again, as law enforcement, you keep a lot of things inside. Sometimes you don't go home and talk about them.
That's excellent. And can we stay there a little bit in regards to your experience as Leo, as a law enforcement officer, and the pressures of the job. So your team that you're going to assume, you know, what would you kind of say to that in regards to their own mental health, you know, being?
Yeah, well, I actually, my latest experience here was when I was still in the FBI as a supervisor. I had agents who had been inside Walmart, and that was very, you know, it was difficult. And everybody deals with it differently, but I still remember how there was one of the guys that I thought was one of the toughest ones. You know, he was having a hard time dealing with coping with what he had seen. And so again, everybody deals with it differently. I was glad that he felt comfortable enough to talk to me and share what he was experiencing. Yeah, but that's really, I mean, it was such a traumatic you know, case, and depending on what they were seeing,
there was an impact. I mean, it was hard on El Paso.
Yeah, especially because if you were there at the scene and saw things that other people didn't see, it was difficult. And so I was glad that, you know, we had programs for them. We even had a conference where they were able to go and, you know, they talked about how to deal and how to cope with situations. So those are the kinds of programs that we need in the sheriff's office, making sure that our employees are okay. Because if you're not okay, your family's not going to be okay. And if your family's not going to be okay, you're not going to be okay at work. So we got to make sure that everybody is dealing with whatever situation you're dealing at work, that we make sure that we have those mental health programs in place.
So those resources is something also that you're like, hey, this is something that I also want to highlight for my team to ensure that, you know, because you know, as individuals who work in Leo, man, my heart goes for all of you, because, you know, you guys are civil servants, and it truly, you know, you guys go above and beyond, and you guys are placed in situations that is hard. So that's super commendable that you want to ensure that the team gets the resources that they need to cope, to be healthy, to be, you know, to be proud and feel good about what they do. Because you're right. If I'm not feeling well, my wife is going to feel it. My kids are going to feel it. And that's just a bad recipe for people not to feel well. So that is something super amazing.
One of the things that the FBI implemented, and this was after I was leaving in the El Paso division, was they got an outside person to be the one that you could contact if you were not feeling well. And I thought that was phenomenal, because I'm going to more likely share something that I'm going through with a stranger that is not connected to anybody in the division. And so I want to do the same thing for the sheriff's office, making sure that we have somebody from the outside who is an expert, who can talk to you if you're going through a situation. If, you know, sometimes people just need somebody to talk to.
Honestly, we're all humans at the end of the day, and I agree with you. And sometimes we do need to let go of some of that tension and pressure that we have, and an outlet. Somebody who is not necessarily affiliated with what we're doing could be could set a good peaceful format to be able to talk. But that is something very, very, very amazing, most definitely. Hey, Minerva, so what about this? So what cutting edge technology and do you plan to introduce into the actual sheriff's office? And how do you think they'll actually, improve efficiency and effectiveness? We are in 2024. There's a lot of new technologies coming in. What's your thought in that?
Well, I know we were talking about mental health, and you don't think about mental health and technology.
Okay.
But when you have an inmate or a person that arrives with mental health problems, and we know that there were mental health problems from the very beginning when we responded to the scene, I would like to implement technology to certain areas in the jail, certain cells, because we want to make sure we have 24 hours monitoring into this person. And this idea actually came from a deputy, or a detention officer, who's in the jail right now.
Oh, wow. So this is like current action information. That's a need.
There's somebody who's in the inside and wrote this paper and said, I would like you to take a look at it. And it's a phenomenal idea. And that's what I mean about sheriff's employees owning the sheriff's office. Like, this is what I think how we can improve it. Who better can improve the sheriff's office than the people themselves who have been there already?
Wow, that is actually very phenomenal. So I guess your approach is saying, hey, you know what? I want to hear, how can I make your job better?
Right. And that's going to be part of the promotional packets. So if you want to promote, you have to tell me how you made the sheriff's office better.
Wow.
Or how did you improve the community? What did you do? How did you get involved in the community? Was there a program that you helped with? So either of those two so they can select either that. Did you get involved in the community, or did you make the sheriff's office better by coming up with an idea on how we can improve the sheriff's office? So that will be part of a promotional packet.
I think that's pretty awesome, because then that kind of removes the whole thought process of saying, hey, you know what? I work here. I like what I do. I want to buy in. I think if we do X, Y, and C, it's going to better. I like it. So basically you're asking the overall team, hey guys, buy into this. Let's work on this together. And it's more of a bottom up, type of approach than a top down approach. Wow, that is very, very interesting. So now, staying in technology and modernization, what challenges, do you anticipate, in the current modernization of law enforcement and, in their practices, and how do you plan to address that?
Well, I think one of the things and this is something that comes up that people say, like, for example, this is a little different, but it'll answer your question. Okay. When I put out that video about creating a traffic enforcement team, one of the questions that came up on the comments was, oh, great. How are we going to pay for this? Well, it's going to cost zero money. Because why?
Really?
Yeah, because all you have to do is reassign personnel. So you're reassigning personnel to this traffic enforcement team. Doesn't have to be full-time. It could be three days out of the week. But you're reassigning, so it's going to cost zero.
So you're basically reallocating.
Yes, reallocating, looking at programs, and that is what it's on the mind of the people. They want to know, how are you going to fix what's happening right now? The reckless driving, the DWIs, the accidents. Well,
honestly, that is huge. I mean, you just look at FitFam. I mean, and that is literally, at the very top, some type of accident, some type of car crash, some type of, and that, I think, is that what you kind of want to address? And that's a concern in the community that we've heard.
I'm listening to the community already. That's why I put out that video, because that is going to be one of the first initiatives that I will implement. Why? Because it's affecting people. It's affecting lives. And so it's not going to cost any money. And so I plan to do that with technology or any other. How can we get it for free? Where can I go? Is there any grants out there? because there's grants. So I want to revamp their, and again, I don't know how many people are in their grant, where the people that write the grants, when's the last time they've gone to training? Because we need to make that team better in order to get more grants for the sheriff's office.
That's excellent.
So, yeah, so is it expensive to get technology there? Absolutely. But there's also ways of looking for technology that is not going to cost. And so that's what I want to do. Is always been very fiscally responsible. I'm fiscally responsible in my own family. I'm fiscally responsible with this campaign, always trying to look for ways that how can we make it work better? How can we get stuff that is not so expensive? Because again, you got to make sure that you have enough money until November 5th. So I will do the same thing with the sheriff's office, because that is your money. And so I'm going to be fiscally responsible with your money the same way that I am in my own home.
Look, I'm going to be honest. That is very, heartwarming, to be honest, to tell you the truth. The fact that you say, hey, you know what? I want to make sure that I'm a good steward with whatever I'm given. And that's pretty cool. That's very,
even if it's not my money, you know that I will always be honest and upfront and tell you, okay, we can actually do it this way, or we can, because again, it's your money. So I'm going to make sure I look for ways to either get it, more affordable, or how can we get it for free.
Wow. Okay, that is amazing. And moving on to another question in training and development. So what are your priorities for enhancing the training and professional development of law enforcement, officers under your leadership?
So there's a lot of free training out there that people don't take advantage of. So in the FBI, I obtained some of the best training ever. I went through the negotiator school, one of the best schools ever, 2 weeks long. We had personnel from all over the world who attended this, And so a lot of that is provided for free.
Really?
So I want to take advantage of that, and this is one of my strengths because I have been in the federal system. I know what kind of training is available out there and is for free, and that's what I want to do for the sheriff's office, is provide a lot of training.
You want to elevate their, wow.
Because that's going to make better employees.
So now let me ask you, many of the actual individuals that are currently in the force might be like, wow, man, that sounds pretty cool. What would be some of the requirements? I mean, do you kind of have an overall plan to ensure that these individuals are prepared, that they feel well equipped and trained? Can you dive a little bit more in that?
So one of the things that I've heard, and again, I'm not part of the sheriff's office, but I have heard the good old boy system. And when I mean the good old boy system is just those particular, if you're not in that inner circle, you might not get the best training. You might not get access to putting in for these specialty groups. So I want to do away with that, because it's never good for any organization to have those good old boy systems in place, because a lot of people are going to suffer as a result of that.
Wow, that is very deep. It's like they say, stagnant water stinks. Rolling water, moving springs, they just produce life, because I see what you're saying. So what you want to, and please, basically what you're saying is you want to kind of open up so that individuals that need that those new individuals that are coming in are able to take that baton and push it forward.
Absolutely. Like you, David, right now, when you have employees in your company, you can pick who are the leaders coming in. And again, it doesn't have to be somebody who's next to you or part of your executive management team. It's just regular employees who come in. You see that spark in their eyes. You see how they take the initiative, always asking, do you need help with something? Are you sure you got it before I go home? There's leaders everywhere.
Yes, and honestly, as a private organization, I know exactly what you're talking about. You want to maximize to those individuals that are going to raise the organization
to another level.
To another level, because at the end of the day, that should be the name of the game. Should be like, hey, those individuals that want to be here, that have, that love the community, that they're vested here. Those individuals are the ones that honestly, I think that's a very beautiful vision.
And like I said, it would fix morale, and the sheriff's office is suffering of that.
Can you, without naming specifics, can you give us 3 points on some of this stuff that you've personally heard that people, because I mean, people approach you, you're very approachable and you're very open. So anything out there that you would like to go in there and kind of just let them know, like, hey guys, I hear you. These are some of the actual points that I kind of want to go in there and, let's work together to change it.
Yeah, and nobody has specifically said, well, this is what's happening, but you know that the morale is bad because you hear that, people can't wait to retire, and that's sad. Because we spend more time at work than we do at home. And so there's, I think, in my opinion, some of the stuff that could be going on, like I said, nobody is just from me gathering data. I love to gather data. I think it's what's in place, that if you're not in that inner circle, you can forget about promoting, and that needs to go away. Like I said, there's leaders everywhere. It could be a brand new detention officer, it could be a brand new deputy, but they have that spark in their eye and they're motivated, and we need to cultivate that and help that deputy or detention officer promote, because they're only going to make the sheriff's office better, and we need to improve it for the future.
Can I ask you a question within this still training and development? And excuse my ignorance. Are there development paths or training paths from your experience? Because look, you've been a police officer, you've been an FBI agent, you've been in the military, so you have a wealth of knowledge. And I know the only one that I could speak to is the military. You do have career paths. In other words, where you could kind of lay out for individuals that want to seek to become somebody in the organization. There's certain paths. Are you aware if that kind of exists within the sheriff department? And if it doesn't, would you want to develop something like that to make it a lot more clear for individuals? Like, guys, like we want you guys to grow within. We want you guys to stay here. We want to retain you.
I mean, absolutely. It's not something that would necessarily be advertised, so I'm not familiar if there is something in place.
Because those are internal kind of, policy structures and
But it's definitely something that we need. Like I tell people, if I were to go back to being a patrol officer, I'd be the best patrol officer ever, because now I know how to do investigations. I would know where to go, where to ask. If you respond to a call for service, I'm going to knock on a few doors next door. I'm going to be looking around for cameras. Is there a camera somewhere here? And then document all that. So it's going to make it easier for the detective once they get the report. It's going to be like, wow, okay, I can go to that house. They have a camera. This neighbor said that they heard this. And so I would be a much better patrol officer because of the experience and the training that I received. And I got to give kudos to the FBI for that. They have the best training out there, and I'm going to take advantage of that. And not just the FBI, but there's other federal agencies out there, HSI, DEA. So I'm going to look into the training that they all can provide, and I'm going to get it for free. And it's going to make the sheriff's office a lot better because we're going to give that to employees.
That's pretty cool. So basically what you're saying is that, you're willing to somewhat think outside the box and in order to bring it back to the department and better the organization. That is, that I've never heard that. That's pretty cool. And the fact that you're willing to explore that's amazing.
It's just that I've seen some of the trainings, and I'll give you an example. Like when I went to Quantico, I had already been a police officer for over 5 years, so I had already shot a gun. I had carried a gun for 5 years. And then we go out there and, everybody gets trained because you're coming in with people that haven't been in law enforcement. Some of them were attorneys, accountants, so they all start out from scratch, and they all teach us how to shoot. Well, I had always heard about when you shoot, you do that smooth, you pull the trigger, smooth pulling the trigger. And I was like, I never really understood it until I went through the academy, because you have an instructor that has you hold the weapon, and they put their finger on your finger, and they say, okay, this is how you pull the trigger back. And so I thought, wow, talk about teaching you basics. And again, I had already shot a weapon, but I got so much better by going through that specialized training that they provide in Quantico. The same thing with the negotiator school. it was the best school that I've gone to, but I felt because they teach you how to communicate all over again. I
Wow.
really thought that I was not going to be successful. It was hard. Like I'm like I don't want to talk that way.
Wow.
and so
Okay.
and so it feels like you're I don't know. I felt like I was like put on a chair. I couldn't use my hands or anything. I only had to use those words that would be able to get illicit information from the subject. And so they teach you all over how to do all that. And I thought, like I said, I thought I
Wow.
was not going to do well, but at the end I pulled it off. I was able to learn everything that we needed to learn. But yeah, one of the best schools that I went to. Yeah.
Wow. So this was the negotiation.
Negotiator school. Yeah, to be a negotiator. So I was a negotiator in the FBI for about, gosh, I'm going to say 7, 8 years. Mhm.
Wow.
We
And
were-
I know I'm kind of, going off a little bit, but if I'm not mistaken, there is some online, facts about this. I don't know if we could go in there and kind of pull it up. I don't know if you, since we're here, I don't know if you kind of want to touch
Yeah,
upon
no,
this.
I would love to just touch on that
so
story.
yeah, most definitely. If we could pull it up, I really would appreciate it. And so tell me about this 8 years as a negotiator. I mean, that's cool.
So there's 2 cases that right after I graduated
Yes.
from the negotiator school, there was a bank robbery.
Bank robbery.
And
Oh
so
Lord.
we'll talk,
Tell me,
there's
tell
a
me about
bank,
that.
your typical, case that you always hear, bank robber. So this bank robber had gone inside the bank, had gotten caught, saying, okay, things went bad for him inside the bank. And
So he was trapped in there.
he was trapped in there. So he took hostages.
Oh Lord.
Yeah, so because the police was outside, so he's like, I forget how many hostages, but he had several hostages in there.
So the area was already cordoned, just
Yeah,
kind of setting
it was a small police department, and so we get there to assist.
Okay.
And I had just come out of the school, and I get put as a coach. So I'm coaching and it was an officer, I believe. I don't remember who's a deputy or an officer. So I'm coaching him because he's already been negotiating for a couple of hours, and you get tired. Yeah, you do.
Wow, really?
And so the way you negotiate is you use the little stickies and you come up with questions and you hand over so at least you're thinking for that person.
Okay.
And you're listening, and so you're saying, okay, ask this next question, ask them this. Yeah, it was a fascinating case. We were able to get him to give up all the hostages
it
at
was
the end.
successful.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it was a successful case, but again, very
Tense.
first, tense.
It was tense. I could only imagine on that. That must be. That must have been very. It must have been crazy. I mean,
Yeah.
there's no other way for me to.
But it was a very rewarding investigation or case, and I really loved it, and it taught me a lot. But yeah, the other one that I wanted to talk
Yeah,
about was my last one. That's at the end of my career as an agent.
Okay.
We had a case, and this was when I was in Washington State.
Okay.
Because Washington State, so I was in a satellite office, which was called Tri-Cities, which is
Okay.
Kennewick, Pasco, and Richland, but they would refer to it as Tri-Cities because it was 3 cities that had combined with each other now.
Okay.
And so we get a call from Kennewick PD that they had taken a woman hostage, a 65-year-old woman. I think she was like 65. She and her husband owned a pawn shop. And so somebody had taken her, had kidnapped her.
So she was a local business owner in that area, and they took her hostage.
They took her hostage, and the person was demanding money for her release because they knew that they had money because of the pawn shop. And so it was a small department, so this is where, again, your training that you obtain, and, they were already talking about, hey, let's go find out where she is and go get her. And I'm like, well, has anybody started negotiations?
Wow. So they already wanted to go kinetic. They wanted to go kinetic.
Yeah, they were already thinking about what the next step was without doing the negotiations. And I was like, why don't we negotiate for her release? I mean,
Exactly.
as opposed to trying to I think what they were, I'm trying to remember, it's been a while, but
We just pulled it up right here. So basically it says FBI joins the hunt for abductee in Kennewick woman, It says Sandra Harris, 69, was still missing Saturday evening and an intense search for the actual woman after she was taken against her will from home Friday, according to the police report right there. So it says, I was not a random abduction, the chief said Saturday. I don't want people to be in fear in the community. So basically what they're saying, that was an out.
Yeah, they specifically targeted that family. But what the negotiations help, and so we all went into a room, started negotiating, and the person was using one of those devices that muffles your voice.
Really?
So we couldn't really understand like what they were saying. So luckily, the person says, text message me, and I thought that is weird because you never have a person who's going to text message. And I thought, but this is better because it's giving us evidence, so let's text message back and forth. And then as I'm looking at the writing, I'm like, that sounds like a girl.
Really? Were you able to decipher that through a text?
Yeah, because women write differently than men. Some of the stuff that I'm like, that sounds like a woman.
And you're in the room with everybody else in there,
that we're doing the negotiations. And so what we were trying to do is coordinate the drop of the money. So when she dropped the money, we would know, and it ended up being a female. So it was a female. So it was one of those unique cases that you don't see very often. And she was actually a correctional officer.
Really? Mm-hmm. That is, I mean, of course, I'm not going to ask you specific on the case, but that's kind of wild.
Mm-hmm. You don't think of that, of women committing. I mean, we do have women that commit
most
crime.
definitely, but it's not in the norm for them
It's not in the norm.
So without asking specifics, just this, how long is you said there was hours in your typical negotiation?
Yeah, it takes hours because you're trying to delay the situation. I know that sounds weird, but you're trying to delay it to allow the SWAT people to get together and come together and come up with a plan. How are we going to go? Where are we going to find her? Where is she at? Where are we going? So, and at the same time, now we had text messages, so you can get cell site information to get you to that location.
Wow.
So you're trying to get, so that's why there's several teams. It's not just the negotiators. The negotiators are doing their thing, and then you have the SWAT people. You have the people that are running the background, trying to analyze who owns the cell phone and where is the cell phone pinging, and so all that. And we ended up. She ended up dropping ended up going to the location where we had the money. But the victim was not there. And sadly, the victim died. She did get killed. And I think it happened from the very beginning when she took her because there was a fight. We could tell there had been a fight in her home. And so, sadly, the
oh my God,
the woman died. Mm-hmm.
But look, I have this question for you because it seems to me that, and excuse my ignorance, and I don't know if there's individuals out there that know a lot about law enforcement, but there is a lot of, work at, with other agencies. So let me ask you this question, is this something that sets you apart from your opponent? Mm-hmm. The fact that you have worked with local agencies, state agencies, and federal agencies at different, and within those, areas in different capacities. Mm-hmm. So do you believe that this makes you a better candidate for El Pasoans to actually bring over to head the sheriff office? Do you think this is something that, sets you apart from your opponent?
Absolutely. During the campaign trail, one of the things that I talk about is cases do not belong to an agency. Cases belong to the community. Because if I am going to put that individual in prison, in jail, for a lot more long time, then the community deserves that. So is somebody, whatever the case situation is, like for example, the human traffickers, drug traffickers, and I've talked about this example in the past. You make an arrest, it's a 17-year-old, 18-year-old moving 5 pounds of meth or cocaine.
Oh, yeah, something horrible.
So is that a good arrest? Well, yeah, I guess it could be a good arrest. You got 5 pounds of meth off the street, you made an arrest. But the human traffickers and the drug traffickers, they're just going to find another 17-year-old, 16-year-old. So I have an obligation as the sheriff to share intel with my federal partners because they can go after those individuals who are based out of the country. We can't, the sheriff's office can't, but they can, because that's who we should be targeting so we can get rid of the problem. So they're not luring more young people to move their dope for them, because they don't care. They don't care if we make an arrest of this 17-year-old, 18-year-old. They're just going to find another 17-year-old and 18-year-old. So we have to share intel. Cases belong to the community, not to any agency.
So let me ask you this same question so that the public could kind of go in there and be aware. Is there different, procedures, jargon, forms of communication that federal, state, and local, have? And through your experience, bringing that onto the sheriff department, you'd be able to go in there and actually, I guess what I'm basically saying is that each agency has a means and procedures of communication. Mm-hmm. Since you've been part of them, does that give you the ability to say, hey, you know what, all of a sudden, let's say the FBI comes in, there's a case, God forbid, there's a case in El Paso that it involves the FBI. Through your background, you as the sheriff, as in the sheriff's office, you would be able to kind of, mitigate that and because you understand. In other words, you mm-hmm. know you were part of that agency, mm-hmm. so you understand their procedures, you understand mm-hmm. their right and left limits, what they can or cannot do. Mm-hmm. Because I guess what I'm saying is jurisdiction-wise, I guess that's what mm-hmm. And excuse my ignorance, that's what you're saying. Everybody has a different jurisdiction, like mm-hmm. So. Can you talk about that, specifically, Well,
there's already, so again, my experience is the FBI because that's what I know. But again, you also have other great organizations like the DEA, HSI, and just so many, Border Patrol. Those only to name a few. But in the FBI, the SAC, which is the special agent in charge, would have executive management meetings where he would bring the sheriff, other top-level leaders from other organizations, and they do their thing and they talk about cases or what they're seeing, whatever they want to share.
Right, high-level type of meetings.
Yes. That's where these conversations should be happening, about how we can collaborate. And I know I've said this in the past too, that's one of the things that I like. I've been gone from the FBI now for a year now, but that's one thing that we would do is wherever you went, you would try to build those relationships with the community, with the sheriff's office, with the police department, and because that means I would create more cases as an agent, and that's what I love to do. Is create cases.
Another question that I kind of wanted to go in there and ask you is in regards to collaborating with other agencies. Mm-hmm. You have a huge background. So mm-hmm. as our next sheriff, can you speak about that? Mm-hmm. Why should El Pasoans, bring you on to mm-hmm. take on that actual, office as a sheriff?
So this is such an important question because this is a position that you can't learn on the job. Mm-hmm. You can't. You're going to have to come in and know what you're doing, and I am that person. I worked in the state level. I worked in the federal level. I worked with so many agencies that I know what their missions are. I know where to go if the information is needed. So if I have a case in the county, I know that who I'm going to go and who I'm going to tap on the shoulder. But I'm not going to wait to have a case where I'm going to need help. I'm going to develop and cultivate those relationships from the very beginning. And if those executive management meetings are no longer happening because they were happening before I left, then I'm going to make sure that they are happening. I'm going to initiate those meetings, not only with law enforcement, but with the community. Why? Because when things happen, we can't be looking for who do we call. We need to have that already planned in place.
Okay, excellent. So basically proactiveness, mm-hmm. saying from day one, mm-hmm. I'm going to establish these actual interagency, mm-hmm. Reaching out to mm-hmm. other individuals mm-hmm. to ensure that mm-hmm. the department is ready to go.
Yes. So one of the things, the sheriff's office oversees the jail, but mm-hmm. you also oversee the deputies working patrol. So as a leader, I've been there. I've done that. I work the streets of downtown Central. I know what it takes to put investigations together as a patrol officer, then being an investigator as a special agent. How do you put those bigger cases together? How can you put these individuals who are not necessarily here in El Paso, but outside the country? Who do I need to reach out to? Which agencies work what? I'm that person because I have that experience. El Paso cannot afford to hire a sheriff who hasn't been or done that. This is no time because we are going to be hurting if we hire the wrong sheriff.
Wow, honestly, El Paso is growing, and I think that that is forward thinking. So I think that that's amazing. That really, really, really is highly, highly amazing. Now, I wanted to go ahead and let me move on to a little bit more in regards to the community safety initiatives that you might have in mind. You know, what innovative approaches do you have for reducing crime and improving public trust, you know, within El Paso County? And how will you, I guess, once again, how will you work with other agencies and organizations to deliver these or implement these safety measures?
So again, it's kind of one of the things that we talked about too, having those roundtable discussions. I want to meet with those experts, have meetings once every quarter. So those are going to be in place with the community, but also have those meetings with other agencies. So in order to implement these programs, we already touched on it and talked about it, that deputies are going to have to own their communities. They're going to have to build those relationships, and we're just going to change things the way have been done. I'm going to take the sheriff's office to another level, and that's by working with the community because I'm an outsider. I have experience, and I know what it's going to require to make it better.
So let me ask you this because it's amazing. This is you taking control and basically providing guidance and a vision. Let me ask you this. What would you say to the community? Because everybody needs to have skin in the game. What would you say to those individuals within the community that have care about these topics? Best way to say this is, how can we best communicate with you once you become the sheriff? How can we as the community also, participate and be part of this in order to ensure that it works? Because it can't just be like, let the sheriffs be the ones that kind of handle it and then everybody just sits back. What would your recommendation, for the community be, for those stakeholders that are out there, for people that are like, hey, I want to be involved as well? What would you recommend? Is there any programs or any type of, efforts that you've thought of saying, hey, you know what, this would be a good way for the community to also step up?
Well, definitely volunteer, because there's different ways of volunteering, especially for the people who have retired and no longer working and they need something else to do. So one of the things that the FBI had was a Citizens Academy, where you can go and you can participate, and you're basically ambassadors for the FBI. And that's exactly the same thing what I envision for the sheriff's office, is having those ambassadors who can help us. The community here is, they're just so helpful. Sometimes people just need to be pointed in the right direction. For example, when there's ever a situation where, like, for example, the Walmart case, we had people bringing us food because we weren't no longer.
Wow.
Yeah, it's phenomenal how the community responds. Also, building those key relationships too, because when you have, let's say you have an incident, God forbid, whatever situation, let's say there's a school involved, you're going to have to set up a command post. And if there's a business who is willing to say, you know what, I'm willing to disrupt my business so you can have that conference room right there. You guys own it, build your command post there, then I'm going to take advantage of that. Why? Because it's going to be a lot better than standing in the street having to deal from a command post. If there's a business who's willing to let you borrow their conference room, so again, that's why you cultivate those relationships, build those relationships, because at one point we're going to need you in other Christmas events where, you accumulate all these toys. People can donate toys so you can go give it to the underprivileged kids who need it, who are not going to have a Christmas. So there's different forms that the community can help. So I'm not sure if I answered your question.
No, honestly, you did. I mean, and specifically with what you were saying in regards to the kids. I remember when I was younger here. You know, I grew up in Socorro. You know, the sheriffs would actually go out there and go to the elementary schools. You know, and it was some fun things. You know, they would give stuff that I remember. And the only reason I know that they were a sheriff department is because their uniform was in black. It was tan, so it had to be them. And there was that involvement at one point. Don't know if they're still doing that.
I've been following them, obviously, and so I don't know if this was happening before or if it started during the campaign trail, but for me is I want to, and this is part of my vision, is build a robust program in the high schools. Why? Because I want kids to know that the sheriff's office is an option and a future for them. That's how we're going to deal with a shortage that's happening right now, not having enough detention officers. So because I want to make sure that young people are already thinking about it. You know, when I grew up, I never had the opportunity that you had. I never had somebody come in there and, you know, but I think it would have been phenomenal because I would have been, I could do that. And so again, that's one of the things that I will make sure that it's in place if it's not having it, and if it is in place, we're going to take it to another level because I want to deal with all those shortages that are being faced right now.
I honestly think that's phenomenal because no matter what, young minds are very impressionable. So having the fact that, hey, yeah, you know, the local sheriff department actually came over there, they had like a job fair, or just basically they had some type of, you know, volunteer, you know, basis, you know, young sheriffs of El Paso or something like that, you know, young deputies, and kind of gets them involved and gets them excited to say, because honestly, I mean, if we put it into context, any bad actor, they're also recruiting. And if there's not an actual opposition to it, in other words, there's no other side, then there's no other opportunity. So I truly do think that El Pasoans would really enjoy that, you know, because we shouldn't be, you know, afraid of law enforcement, you know, because law enforcement individuals, they live in our communities. They have, you know, their children also go to the same schools that our children go to. You know, they have parents, they have brothers, they have sisters. So, yeah, I think that changing the overall perspective is amazing.
And not everybody's a bad person. So as deputies, you can't be thinking, well, you know, I can't mingle and talk to the community, because the majority of the community are good people.
Yeah.
And again, when somebody goes into jail because they committed something wrong, the whole family suffers. Really, if there's a person that has a wife and kids and they end up getting in trouble and they go to jail, now the wife is suffering along with him. The kids are suffering because now the kids have to go to the jail and do those visitations. But not only that, mom, if there's a mom around, dad around, sisters, brothers, the entire family suffers. I know I got a little bit sidetracked with that, but
it's true. It's the truth.
Yeah, sometimes you might not be the one, or your family's not the one who got in trouble, but let's say you have a brother or a cousin who got in trouble. Now you're part of that, because now you're going to have to go visit that person there. And sometimes we even hurt more than the individual who is, especially as mothers. If your son did something that was wrong, now you're even suffering more because you're like, my niño's in there. You know, so again, it's just, but we need to build those relationships with the community, because we need the community too.
So, and let's kind of stay in there, because, you know, some of the actual civic participation from the people, from the local community, other programs that you have had in mind, like neighborhood watches or things like that, is within your overall vision, is that part of it?
Yes, absolutely. Yes. We're going to implement different programs, if they're not already in place, to see how we can, you know, just take it to another level with the community. Because again, we are not doing enough to save our young people. And I know that is not the job of a law enforcement officer or deputy. Both of us have to work at it. Because if we have young people who are getting attracted by those human traffickers, drug traffickers. Who is supposed to get involved in that? Not everybody is. But there might be somebody else out there who said, you know what, I can do that. I had a person that I recently met who says, hey, I heard that you're going to be implementing a program in the high schools. I would love to be a part of that because that's my passion.
Wow.
So you're going to find people out there who that is their passion and they want to do, but people can't get passionate if they don't know what's happening. So that is our job, to share information. That is my job as a sheriff, to have those conversations with the community. That's why I'm going to meet in person with them 3 times a year, at least 3 times a year. And I'm going to communicate through video. I'm going to update the website so you know what is happening in your community. So those are all forms of communication. So the person that is out there that feels like, oh, I can do this, I can be a part of that, then they can get involved.
You know what? Let's kind of touch upon that when it comes to accountability and transparency. What exactly is your opinion on those two things? Please, would you like to share with us that?
Yeah. So again, we serve the community. We protect and we serve. And we have an obligation to communicate with the community. Why? Because it's your hard-earned money that is funding the sheriff's office. So you should know how your hard-earned money is being utilized. It shouldn't be a secret. And again, I envision having on the website a big pie that says 10% is going for this, 20% is going for this program, 30% is going here, 50% is going for pay or whatever it may be. And you should be able to see it and say, wow, okay, you might never need it, but it's there. It's for visibility and transparency, because we shouldn't be doing anything in secret, because then you lose the trust of the people.
That is amazing. So what you're saying is that you want to let us, the community, know this is how we're spending your money.
Yeah, again, going back to what we talked at the beginning, you're hiring the next sheriff. You should know who you're hiring as your next sheriff. You have the right to have a debate, to know who you're hiring. And if the other one of us does not want to participate in a debate, then you should ask yourself why. Why is that person trying to hide?
Wow, that's very deep. No, and that's very true. Because if you have nothing to hide, then you should have nothing to fear.
Right.
That is amazing.
And you don't want to have somebody on the job who doesn't know the job. I know law enforcement like the back of my hand. And that's what you need as the next sheriff. Because you don't need somebody in there who's going to be hiring who has selected their executive management already, saying, well, I selected this group because they know what they're doing. No, I know what I'm doing, and I'm the ultimate responsible person. So I should know what I'm doing. And if you don't, then you shouldn't be running for sheriff, because we, the community, will suffer as a result of that. And we don't need that.
Wow, no, honestly, I think that El Pasoans need to demand a debate. They need to demand, they need to, how can I best say it? You need to be part of the solution, not just an actual, person who's standing by and how do they say it? Basically spectating. You need to actually go in there and be part. And honestly, I think that's something that El Pasoans should ask.
And I think it's people say, well, this is an elected position, or you're a politician. I'm not a politician. I am running for an elected position. But this is not just an elected position. This is a position that requires experience. And if you don't have that experience, you're not running for city council or another position where you're like, maybe I can learn on the job. This is no time for learning. If you don't know law enforcement, if you haven't lived it, if you haven't done investigations, if you haven't ran and managed people, then you shouldn't be running.
Wow.
Because we're going to suffer. the community is going to suffer.
Yeah, and like you said, just by hearing you, this is not a joke to you.
No, it's not. That's why I take it I'm very passionate about this. I've shared in the past why I decided to run, because this position belongs to the people. And I am working hard so this gets out to the community. If you have an idea on how I could share my information with others, if you want to invite me to your church or wherever gathering, a birthday gathering, wherever we're seeing other people and there's going to be a gathering, invite me.
Yeah.
You can even say that you're not endorsing me, but you're giving me a platform to talk to others, because the message has to get out that the sheriff's office, that the next sheriff is a position that belongs to the people, and you have a right to know who you're hiring as the next sheriff.
Honestly, I think that's amazing. So leaders out there, if you want to go in there and kind of open up your space so that it could be a center of information. You just heard it here. All you have to do is reach out to you. Where would they reach out to you? Let's say if, anybody sees it out there and they're like, hey, you know what? Yeah, I would love to kind of have her over here. I want her to kind of talk, or I want to bring her to my church or my company, or, the neighborhood.
Yes.
I mean,
you can go to my website, which is www.minerva4sheriff.com. You can go on there, and then you're going to see my email on there. You're going to see my phone number. You can text me, get a hold of me, send me an email. But again, if you are a pastor and you want to invite me, you can say at the beginning that you don't endorse me because you don't want to get in trouble. Say you don't endorse me, but you're giving me the opportunity to introduce myself. Well, let me go stand in the lobby, talk to people as they're leaving. So again, we cannot take this lightly. This is an important position, and you deserve to know who you're hiring as your next sheriff.
Honestly, and that's awesome, because I think that, people should go in there and they should, just what you're doing. Hey, community, I'm here. Like, I want to be present. That's amazing.
Yeah. And I encourage everybody to like and share my stuff. The social media stuff. Why? Because now you're sharing it with friends. So if there's people out there that we haven't reached out to, because there is a lot of people out there, that goes a long way. All you're doing is liking and sharing it, or just share it. That way others get to see it and they can make a decision for themselves. But people, I've had people tell me, well, isn't the sheriff's race over? No, it's not over until November 5th.
Yes.
November 5th is the day you select the next sheriff.
Okay, so let's kind of, I like to, these are call to action. So you're right. There's people that said, hey, man, I already went in there. I voted in the primaries. I've already elected. Now, please, can you let individuals know why is it important? Is the race over?
It's not over. It's not over. People think that, because we had a runoff. That was only a runoff on the Democrat side. Come November, you get to decide. You don't have to vote according to your party. You vote for the person, and I encourage you to do that. Look at both backgrounds. Look at what the persons have done. I didn't start being involved in the community because I started running for sheriff. I've been involved in the community for a long time. I've served on several nonprofit organizations. I volunteered through my church, or just volunteering through different pastors that I've known. So you need to look for somebody who has been there, who has been working with the community already, not started working with the community when they started campaigning.
Let's kind of highlight that. You're part of a board, aren't you, currently right now? What board do you kind of sit on right now?
So one of the boards that I sit on is the Boys and Girls Club, which is it's an after-school program that serves the underprivileged kids, and
Awesome.
So. Yes, but I participated in another one. I participated one that helps. It's a learning center for children with Down syndrome and families who have a child with Down syndrome. So that was one of the ones. The other one was a group of women who volunteer throughout their community. So I also participated in that one. So like I said, I'm currently part of the Boys and Girls Club. So always been involved or volunteered through different pastors that I've known, that I met through my time in the FBI, and I continue to help here and there. So yes, it's my passion is the community.
Awesome.
And so that's what I want to continue.
What about in the city? Are you also involved in the city at any capacity?
Yes, because the city gets to elect the next sheriff too. It's not just the county, even though the sheriff oversees the county, the city gets to elect or vote for the next sheriff. So yeah, I'm involved everywhere. I mean, I talk to people everywhere. And so please, the call to action is like and share. Talk to people about, about me. Share anything that you see that you like. We need to make sure that the message gets out. If you have a business that has high visibility or a home that has high visibility because of the traffic that passes by there, please get a hold of me. We'll take a yard sign, we'll take a small banner, whatever you need out there just to get my name out there. So whatever you can do, again, I am running as the people's sheriff because I want to work with the community to address the problems that we're facing, but this campaign belongs to the people too. So please get involved.
You heard it, El Paso, you heard it. What distinguishes you from the other candidate, and in terms of experience, vision, approach to the sheriff's office?
So my opponent and me are night and day. One, because of my experience.
Okay.
So again, I've done this for so long. My opponent likes to say, well, I've already been elected to a position. Well, we're not hiring a politician. We're hiring a sheriff, somebody that knows law enforcement. So our backgrounds are night and day. So yeah, again, it's not difficult to make a decision because you're going to see that my vision for the sheriff's office is completely different than my opponent.
Now, so let me kind of ask you this: what are some of the qualities that, let's say, that you admire from your opponent, and what aspects of his platform do you disagree or have some concern with?
So I do know Oscar from, our previous law enforcement contacts, and he actually used to help me.
Wow.
Whenever we did an investigation, whenever my agents or the agents did an investigation and created a case, we needed to either execute a search warrant or execute an arrest warrant, I would call him. And
Wow.
he was there to help because we needed his vehicle lights. We needed his placard that said police to make sure that if I'm executing a search warrant at your home, that it's the police out there. So a lot of the vehicles that we had were not visible, didn't have police out there. We had the lights, but even you look at the car and you're not going to think, is that the police? So I wanted to make sure that the community was safe so that there was a marked unit outside, and he would help. But the investigation did not belong to him. He did not create that investigation. He was there to help. And I want to give him, always been thankful for his, for him responding whenever he could to help. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. And then what are some of the concerning things or disagreements that, on visions that you might go in there and would like to highlight?
So he talks about having and I hope I get it right, social services team in order to address things that are happening, like let's say somebody doesn't have enough food, that he wants to provide food, or if it's a family violence situation, he wants to give him those resources. But again, ask him, because he can explain it better. But I'm just going from the little bits I've heard. Well, that sounds like a great idea, but we are a law enforcement agency. And as the next sheriff, you are responsible for the safety of the community. You are safety of the deputies. When you execute a search warrant, you got to make sure that deputies are going to be safe, that the families where you're going to go in, the house that you're going to go inside, you got to make sure that everybody inside that house is safe and the surrounding areas. So how are those social services teams going to work? Are they going to go to the scene? And if somebody gets hurt, who's going to be responsible for that? Because you are ultimately responsible for that.
Okay.
But you wouldn't think about these things unless you've done law enforcement.
I see exactly what you're saying.
So again, all that is already in place. At least I would hope it's in place in the sheriff's office. If you go to a scene and somebody needs help, or let's say they need family counseling, you could always pass out information and say, here's information, get a hold of this agency, they can help you. Or let's say that you see that a child is not being taken care of. Well, you already call CPS. So CPS can do their thing and respond or whatever. But again, when you are allowing somebody to get close to the scene, you have to think about those things, the safety of the person who's getting close to the scene, because now you're the one who requested them to get into that environment. So God forbid something goes wrong, who's ultimately responsible?
Yeah, it would be following the person who actually kind of sent them or approved it.
Right.
Yeah.
And if, same thing that I talk about, when somebody dies in jail because of an accident or a suicide, you can be sure that the family will likely gonna sue because their loved one was in our custody. And why is that important to you? Because when somebody sues, you're the one who's paying for that.
Ultimately.
So it's
Yeah.
the same thing with a scene. If somebody gets injured and hurt, you are ultimately responsible. Us taxpayers are gonna be responsible. So those are the things that, again, that's why I said the sheriff's office or the next sheriff is not somebody that you can hire who's going to be learning on the job. That person needs to know law enforcement.
Wow. Okay. No, honestly, that's amazing. Honestly, thank you for answering that. I think this is good, excellent, actual content for the community. They should go in there and kind of see this and say, wow, okay, I hope people get involved.
Okay, I do too.
Now, we're going to kind of change a little bit of gears. How about let's go in there and let's talk a little bit about you.
Okay.
How do you describe yourself as a person?
I'm very humble. I've never forgotten about where I came from, like, say, growing up in Mexico for 8 years. If I walk into a situation or a place, I'm always going to greet whoever is there. I'm not going to make any difference, the CEO is there, and I'm going to go straight to the CEO. I'm going to mingle with everybody, and I'm going to talk with everybody because that's who I am. So, yeah, as a person, I say that, I've never like I said, even when I was in the FBI, I never shared that. For me, it was always, if I was at a soccer, I wanted to be known as the soccer mom. I was there because of my son, and I was not going to talk about work. And so a lot of people didn't even know I was in the FBI because I that's not who I identify with. I identify with who I am as a person, as a mother.
Wow, that is very amazing. Now, if you had the capabilities and you were to pick one word, what would that one word, how in order to describe you, what would that word be?
Justice.
Justice.
Just because of what happened to my father when I was 8, 9 years old. He was falsely accused of a crime and then found guilty in civil trial later. It just made a huge impact on me that I always thought I wanted to do my small piece in the world when it came to justice, making sure that it didn't happen to somebody else.
Wow. So I don't know if you kind of want to stay there. How did you said it impacted you in what way?
Just because I knew he was innocent. My father was like the best Christian ever. He was a man of integrity. He used to say a saying all the time, saying, "A mí nadie me pisa mi cola," meaning that he didn't have a tail. He wasn't always the perfect person, but when he found God,
none of us are, yeah.
Yeah, he changed his whole life around, was a Christian man. So when I was born, he was already a Christian, so I never knew the other person he would say he was. But so growing up, he would always say that saying, "A mí nadie me pisa mi cola," meaning that he didn't care anything extra. It was who he was. And so when he was found accused of not paying some money that his boss accused him, and his boss was just upset because my father had gotten a better job offer and he had put in his 2 weeks notice to go to another company. That's when he was accused that, well, pay me the money you owe me. And my dad's like, I've always paid you. You just give me a check and I turn around and give you the cash you pay me, because my dad used to get paid in cash.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. And then he needed to send money to his family in Mexico. So he would say, "Hey, can I get a check for so-and-so? And so much money." So he would get a check, and my dad would turn around and pay him with the money that he would get paid. But his boss said, "Well, can you prove it?"
Oh, wow.
So he was found guilty once he went to civil trial, and it made a big impact. I thought, how can somebody innocent be found guilty in in the United States? Like, this is supposed to be better. So yeah, I'm always defined with justice, just because I want to do my small share.
Right, of actually making things right. Call a ball and a strike, that type of deal. Very, very, very interesting. Let me see. Who is the most important? What is the most important thing in your life?
God.
Amen. Okay, that is the most important factor in your life.
So family is, God is, then family, right?
Okay.
And that's why I want to make the sheriff's office a good place to work, because you're there most of the time, but what's important is your family. Like, that's what's important. God forbid I ever go to the hospital or get sick. Who's going to be there for you? It's going to be your family.
Wow.
Not even the people at work, unless you build those really good relationships, but the family's the one who surrounds you with love and help.
Wow. Okay. What is your most important message? Something that voters must keep in mind next November when they see two candidates for the El Paso County Sheriff, office.
Yeah.
On
Excellent question. We touched a little bit about it. Sometimes I'll say we're going to make history electing the first female sheriff.
That's huge.
Huge. But you know what? I just happen to be a female because I was born a female. But
Yes.
but I'm the most experienced candidate for sheriff. And you cannot take this lightly. We can make El Paso a lot better by electing the right person. So look at their backgrounds. Look at who we are. I've been involved in my community. I know law enforcement like the back of my hand. I love to work with the community, and that's who I'll be as your next sheriff.
Wow. Well, honestly, that is amazing. So for all the voters out there, the race is not over.
It's not over. It's November 5th. Just remember, when you go vote for the next president, that's when it's the next election. Don't forget to continue going down the ballot and vote for the next sheriff.
So that's very important. So now that we are in a presidential election, cycle, it's important. November, don't go all the way till you actually find the position for the sheriff office.
And if you have abuelito, who they don't have social media, but please make him aware that I am running to be the next sheriff. Sometimes you can just take a picture of one of the whatever's on social media and send it to them via text message. That's what I tell people when I pass out and I give them my flyer. I said, you can take a picture of it and then send it to your family, friends, if you don't have social media, because there is a big population out there who still don't follow social media and stuff.
Yeah.
So there's different forms of getting the word out. Again, if you have a business with high visibility, a lot of traffic, please let me know. Allow me to put a banner out there. We need to get the word out.
So that is amazing. So anybody out there that is interested and wants to go out there and, they want to be part of the community. They want to be part of the change, you heard it. You could go ahead and contact minerva4sheriff.com. You could actually go out there and anyhow, this is a grassroots movement. So anything that you guys are able to go out there, we're basically giving a shout out and a call to action to everybody to say, hey, if you want, have some skin in the game, most definitely visit minerva4sheriff.com. And there is, so let me before I close, are there any current, positions or needs that the community could actually go in there and assist you? Is there anything in itself that you're like, hey, because I know everything you're doing grassroots, completely everything, from hitting the neighborhoods, every single day, walking, pamphlets, events. Is there anything out there, if anybody out there is like, hey, man, I want to do something, what are some of the, areas or things that you're you're looking for that if people are willing and they have the time?
So yeah, excellent question. So we have all kinds of, we need help in everything. We're doing block walking, we're doing phone banking. So if you want to volunteer and go maybe to an event that I'm at, you're more than welcome, because again, I need help taking notes. Sometimes it gets overwhelming, so I need somebody to help me. We just had a fundraiser, and luckily somebody from the community who had wanted to volunteer came out and helped me just taking names as far as who's showing up. And so we are going to need help also the day of the election for early voting. We're going to need a person in every place where people are going to be voting to hold up my sign, to hold up a yard sign saying vote for Minerva. So you can, if that's what you want to do, we can also, there's room for that. There's just so many forms of serving. If you have a house with high visibility, please let me know. We'll put a banner, a yard sign out there. Yeah, just get involved because again, if take an active role in changing our community because we all live here.
So they could contact you through social media?
Mm-hmm.
So
Social media or www.minerva4sheriff.com. There's a phone number there that you can call or send me a text message. There's different forms that you...
So awesome, Minerva. So now one of the other things that I kind of wanted to go in there and begin to touch upon is, comparing the candidates on this actual, race. Mm-hmm. What do you know or what differentiates you and your opponent?
Okay.
Whatever you could give us,
Mm-hmm. Well, definitely my background, my law enforcement experience. I've worked in the local, state, federal system. I know how the pieces, how they all come together, how we work together, who handles what federal investigations, who handles what state investigations, because I've been part of it. And why is that important to you as the community?
Yeah.
Because you are going to have somebody as the next sheriff who's going to know what to do in case we have a crisis. There is no time for learning, and there's no time for tapping somebody else on the shoulder asking, okay, what do I do now? No, I am going to make the decisions based on the experience that I have. Okay, so you look at my opponent's experience.
What experience does he bring to the table? Why are you,
so that's kind of a little bit iffy because I've been trying to look it up myself too, but from what I gather, but please do your own research in case I get something wrong. But I believe he did 2 years in a small police department, Socorro PD. I did 5 years in El Paso PD working the downtown area, one of the business area. But anyways, back to him is he did 2 years in a small department. Then he became a bailiff for several years.
What is a bailiff? What is that? I'm sorry.
Well, a bailiff...
They have to do with courts, correct?
Right,
Okay.
it's courts, and they basically sit in a courtroom and just observe the trial and make sure that everybody is safe inside a courtroom. So he did that for several years.
Okay.
So that's my understanding that is the bulk of what they do as a bailiff.
Yeah, that's not in when I was looking him up, that does not show on his actual page or anything like that. So he was a bailiff. Okay.
He was a bailiff.
Okay.
But I know I've read it, that he was a bailiff. And so then after that, he became a constable.
A constable. Sorry, a constable.
Mm-hmm.
What exactly is a constable? I mean, I think he is the precinct 1 constable in charge, correct?
So I mean, I don't even know if I don't know if he's still a constable. I think he is. I don't know if they have to step down when they're running, so I'm not sure.
What role do they have in the community as a constable? What role do they play, or what?
So a constable, they work for justice of the peace.
Okay.
So they do different things, but it's my understanding, I guess, since I always like it to explain in examples, is, for example, let's say a family hasn't paid their rent or hasn't paid, they're going to get evicted.
Evictions.
So
Okay.
they go and serve the eviction notice. And if that family still doesn't move, then they go and make sure that the family moves out. So they serve eviction notice. So that's one of the things.
Okay.
But I would encourage everybody to look up what a
constable does,
which is not the same kind of background that I have, because again, I've done so much. One of the biggest operations that I led was involving the 56 FBI field offices. I was specifically selected to do that, to lead that operation because of my background, because of my experience. So that took over a year to put together. And again, it involved numerous people, 86 task forces throughout the U.S. So again, our experiences are night and day. So I would encourage the people to look up his background. We cannot afford to have a sheriff that is learning on the job.
That is a huge contrast. Okay, can you go a little bit in deeper on how? So basically, you're telling me you were selected to actually, run this. So this is cross multiple agencies. Are we talking also international agencies? Are we talking local, federal? I mean, you don't have to get specifics into the case, but can you, give us a little bit about exactly, the leadership and the experience that you're bringing in, and El Pasoans would be, truly blessed to have that. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So it was an operation that it was going to involve over a time span of a week, making several arrests. It involved the 56 field offices, because that's how many offices we have, the FBI has throughout the U.S.
Oh, wow.
And it involved
This was nationwide.
Nationwide, and 5 countries got involved. One of the countries that had not been involved in the past, but I sought them out and encouraged them to participate, was our UK authorities.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I got the opportunity to travel to London and meet with several people over there to talk about how they could get involved, what they could do. And again, the operation unfolded for an entire week. Different offices were going to have it. Let's say some people had it on Monday and Tuesday, other offices had it on Tuesday and Wednesday. And so, but it involved manning the command post for that entire week. But putting it all together was definitely a challenge. My days were long, started at 7 in the morning. I never left the office probably till after 7.
Wow.
Again, you have to put the budget together, coordinate, making sure everybody has what they need. We also had to work on the social media stuff, on what we were going to put out, what we were going to do for the B-roll, who we're going to interview. So it involved just numerous pieces. So again, I've been there, I've done that. I've done many operations, overseen a lot of operations as a brand new agent. I created and led a multi-agency task force that I created. It wasn't there like I took it. I created because I saw a problem. This was in Sacramento. Sacramento PD had a relationship with the Sacramento FBI office, but it wasn't really much.
Okay.
And when I came on board, I was able to get them to give me 2 detectives to be a part of the task force. Yeah, we did a lot of cases together.
So resources were actually allocated for whatever mission you were.
Yes.
Wow.
And it was back then. It was human trafficking. So we're doing the human trafficking and looking for the perpetrators who were exploiting a lot of the victims.
Wow.
And again, it involved several agencies: the sheriff's office, the Sacramento PD, because of the cases we created. Because once the federal charges come down, people start talking, and it resolved to unsolved murder. So
really,
so I just a lot
so you have the experience to lead an entire department, an entire office.
Definitely, I would not be stepping into this role if I was not prepared. Because El Paso cannot afford to have somebody who's not prepared to lead the sheriff's office.
It's critical, because let's just kind of highlight it. You've worked for El Paso PD.
5 years working downtown, and specifically selected downtown because it was one of the toughest areas back then.
What time frame was this? What years? Those 5 years?
1997 to 2001.
Okay, so you worked those 5 years
as a patrol officer. I wanted to prove it to myself that I could do it. I wanted to make sure that I could make it as a patrol officer, because it was important to me. I remember when I got there, there was another lady who had been on patrol 8 years. I admired her. I was like, man, like she's done 8 years, because not too many females, because either they had a family or something happened, would last in patrol.
And this is late 90s, early 2000s.
Yes.
So different world.
Different world. So again, when I showed up it was a different world, because when I went to the academy, I remember they have that briefing for you, and they say, you got to cut all your hair. And my hair back then was as long as it is now, because I didn't have it this long.
Did you cut your hair?
Yes, you couldn't.
It was policy.
You couldn't have it longer than an inch. And I was like, what?
Okay.
I said, I have to cut my hair. They say, well, do you want to come in or not? So I cut my whole hair. You couldn't wear makeup during training. We had to do push-ups in our knuckles, and you were doing it in the gravel. So again,
Up in the mountain.
up in the mountain. I am proud of that because it made me who I am
Yeah,
today.
you earned your stripes. But now, another interesting fact about you is that you were also in the military, and you were intel. Okay, so how long did you do military for?
So I did 6 years of active and inactive duty as military intelligence. I was a sergeant. So again, it made me who I am today. I remember basic was hard for me, like, because again, I didn't come from a military background. I didn't have a father who told me this is what's going to happen. And so I get there. Real funny story. I would get in trouble for saying thank you. Like,
really?
Yes, because you know how they tell you to do push-ups because you're getting in trouble?
Yeah.
And I said, okay, permission to recover? And they would say, recover. Say thank you. No, you don't say thank you.
Get back down.
Get back down. I must have gone back down like 5 times because I kept saying thank you because it was in my language. To this day, and you can probably relate to this, and any military person out there, you feel guilty for stepping on the grass.
Oh, believe me, I still walk on the actual.
Yes, I do too. Why? Because it's ingrained in us. Like, you don't walk on the grass.
Yeah, I learned the hard way because there was this CSM at Bragg that actually went in there, and I was like, man, I'm just gonna cut, and I decided to cut. Last time I ever did it. Last time I ever did that, but so.
And it's terrible because you suffer because
But that's part of the discipline, though.
That's part of the discipline. It made me who I am today, and it made it better when I went into the PD. But I had and I hear that he's still around, and maybe one day I'm going to run into him. Yeah. I will never forget his name, Serrano. That was his officer, Serrano. Like, he was extra hard on me. And we had to get trained with a baton. And this is in the PD. So you had to go up there, and another cadet was next to you, and they had to hit you. It wasn't the real baton, but it was.
It was a training material.
Training. So I got hit, and they tell you, don't lock up your knees. So what happens? You see that baton coming, you're going to lock up. And he says, hits me, and I lock my knees, and it hurts so bad. But of course, I just stood there. And so the instructor says, hit her again. She didn't feel it. So he hits me again. And I'm like, so he hit me again, and it hurt because this time I definitely locked my knee. And so the instructor says, she didn't feel it. Hit her again. So I get hit 3 times. And he's going to ask him to do it again. And I looked at him and I said, it hurt. And so he stopped, but again, like a day, 2 days later, one of the other instructors sees me changing in the women's locker room because everything's rush. I had a big old bruise, black and blue, that they were even worried, making sure that I wasn't building because I got hit so hard. But yeah, so again, all that made me a better person. I am a better person. I am a very strong person.
And honestly, I could kind of go in there and see it because, this was the 90s. You know what I'm saying? Things were a little bit different. So with that being said, I do understand that. What's so cool is that you're like, hey, you know what? I went in there, and you're not claiming because I was a woman. You're like, hey, I was there to be an officer, and I was going to go through the process. A little bit bruises, but at the same time, you were like, I'm going to earn my stripes, and I'm going to go out there. That's super admirable. And, that is. I mean, but at the same time, you have to train as you fight. So I also imagine that, hey, you know what? It's tough out there, and you proved that you're tough. So then you did the 5 years of PD. Then you went 21 years then
to the FBI. So I didn't even take a break. So I left the PD in January of 2001. No, January 2002. So September 11 happened in 2001. So I went into the FBI January 2002. And so I left the PD and went right into the FBI. I didn't even take time off. I know. And so then 21 years in the FBI, working criminal, counterterrorism, criminal. I worked everything, kidnappings, theft, organized theft, got the privilege of working fugitives, some murder investigations because of the investigation information that they were giving us.
Negotiations
so,
as well.
So all kinds of bank robberies, hostages. I when I promoted, I got the privilege to work like 3 shooting reviews, office inspections. I've learned a lot what gets employees in trouble and all.
So both the administrative side while
Yeah.
also the law enforcement side.
Yes. So again, this is no time to learn the job. If you don't know it, there's no time to be. The sheriff is not a place to learn law enforcement, because ultimately you are responsible for the safety of the deputies, safety of all the employees of the community. You cannot hire somebody who's learning on the job.
Wow, that is very much amazing. One of the things that I did actually want to kind of go in there is highlight the actual phone number. I don't know if it's okay, we could give it that way. People.
Yes, it's the 915-494-0305.
Sweet. So then, therefore, you guys got it. 915-494-0305. You could actually get in touch if you guys want to volunteer, if you guys want to contribute. That is another excellent form that you can just shoot a text. I guess it would be good. Shoot a text with name and information, and somebody will contact you back.
And like I said, your donations go a long way. I need donations to buy more banners, to buy more yard signs.
Let me kind of highlight that. And why is that important? Why are you requesting for the community to actually donate? Are you endorsed by any big candidates, anybody out there? Are you endorsed at all?
No, I haven't been endorsed by anybody because other than the people, because I'm not seeking endorsements. I'm out there seeking the endorsement of the people. That's what's important to me, and that's why I encourage you to donate. If you can donate $5, $10, $15, $20, whatever you can.
Or your time.
Yeah, or your time. Whatever you can donate. Again, this campaign belongs to the people, so I want you to get involved. We are going to make a change together. We are going to make history on November 5th, electing the first female sheriff.
That is amazing, 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 amazing. Honestly, I really do appreciate this. I think this is some excellent stuff that the community needs to go in and hear. And I hope you guys like, share, and the content. That would be a great way. If you can't donate any money or you can't donate any time, just liking and sharing and just making others aware of what's going on. I think that would be amazing.
Yeah, and remember, November 5th is the day that you show up and vote. Let your voices be heard.
Awesome. So you guys have heard it, guys. Call to action. November 5th is the actual real day where you guys get to choose your actual next sheriff. And honestly, guys, whatever you could do. Thank you so much. I really do appreciate you. And great. Appreciate you.
Thank you.